Alright everybody, we are back with Teddy's historic content list. Last week we did the best chins in boxing history, and this week we're switching it up to the best jabs in boxing history. So we won't waste any time, we'll jump right into it. Your top 10 list, bud. Best jabs in boxing history.
Jab is the most important punch in boxing because it takes care of defense, keeps your guy where you want to keep him, keeps your opponent defensive minded, keeps him at the distance you want, and it sets the table for your offense, for your other punches, for the power punches, for the other punches. It sets the table, as I said. So it serves multiple purposes: defense, offense, and geography. I always talk about geography. You can control geography and where you want to keep somebody and where you want to be and where you want him to be when you have a good jab. So without further delay, I'll go into what I think is the greatest jabs of all time. And I'm sure it's going to invoke conversation, argument, good argument, nice argument, like those, like in a family, are the Mets better? Are the Yankees better? That kind of stuff where you're gonna be voting for your guy. You're gonna be making a case for your guy. So me and my son hope that this is what these lists create. That kind of conversation, that kind of just fun to talk about. And like I've said before, if you guys come out and show you like these lists by coming out and seeing them, obviously with the number of views, we're going to keep doing them. If you don't, we're going to stop. So far you like them, so we'll keep going. All right, number 10. It doesn't have to be exact order. I'm going to throw a few guys at you afterwards that just barely missed the list. But I'll start with number 10, the great light heavyweight champion, Billy Conn. Doesn't get enough credit. Doesn't get enough credit for being the great fighter that he was during a generation that had a lot of great fighters and a great light heavyweight champion. And the reason for it is what I've said many times. I complain about it. I get upset about it. It's one of the reasons why I do these lists, to be honest, is that there's not enough people, period, fans out there, and especially young ones, that know enough about these great fighters that are part of the history of this great sport. They just don't know. And the reason they don't know is there's not enough places for them to learn. In baseball, basketball, football, that information is more available. It's just more available. In boxing, unfortunately, sometimes finding out about these great fighters from the past is not as readily available to fans. So we want to make it available. Billy Conn, number 9. Sonny Liston. Yeah, he was a big bear. He was a powerful guy. He was a great fighter. He was underrated because of what was attached to him, with his, unfortunately, the way he died and the people that were around him. Where there was always the talk about the mob influence and did he take a dive against Ali and all that stuff. But what gets missed with all of that is how good he was. He was a hell of a fighter. He wasn't just a puncher, and he was a puncher, but man, he could fight. And he had a jab. He had a special jab. He had a jab that it could even be on the top of the list. It was hard. It was like a foam pole. It was accurate. I mean, it discombobulated you, kind of like a George Foreman in that kind of way. But even better, the thing about listening that I noticed when I watched film, and Cus was kind of happy that I was able to kind of see this as a 18-year-old kid looking at film. When he threw his jab, it didn't end here. How they measure your length and they measure, how long your jab is. It didn't stop here. It went like another 6 inches, almost like he was double jointed. I mean, it was amazing when I saw that. And it was always with power. Number 8, the great middleweight champion who I thought one of his greatest strengths, obviously, was being able to make other fighters fight their fight, his fight. He was tall, he was long, but not everybody knows how to use those physical assets. Monzon was able to really impose his style of fight onto the opponent. Again, to make the opponent fight the fight that Monzon wanted him to fight. That was what made him, one of the things, to go with his talents, of course, that made him so great. And in order to impose his style on other guys and to be able to control the outside and use those assets, it started with the jab. It started with the jab. He was consistent. He was smart with it. He understood that was the portal to victory for him. That allowed him to fight his fight and to keep guys where he wanted to keep them, to make them fight a kind of fight that sometimes they didn't want to fight. Number 7. Well, maybe the greatest fighter of all time. If not the greatest, he's up there in the top 2 or 3. Sugar Ray Robinson. Wow, he had everything. He had speed, he had power, he had combinations, he had a great chin, he had footwork. He had a great jab. Number 6, one of the greatest lightweights of all time, any era. Benny Leonard. Wow, boxing wizard. You can't be a boxing wizard without a jab. Number 5, during the era when they were smaller, the heavyweight, this guy was a great middleweight. This guy was a great light heavyweight. Great light heavyweight. One of the greatest light heavyweights you're ever going to see. But he was also heavyweight champ. And yeah, they were smaller back in those days. He was different, though. He was a guy that he won with his mind. He won with his legs. He won with his ingenuity, his boxing skills, and his heart. When he had to fight a heavy grab and had to get down and dirty, he was able to do it. When he had to get off the floor with the great Jack Dempsey, he got off the floor with the great Jack Dempsey. But he was a strategist. He was a guy who controlled the ring, the geography, as I love to say, of the ring. He was a guy who boxed your ears off. And you can't do that without a jab. And that was the great Gene Tunney. Number 4, again, here's a name that a lot of you guys just wouldn't be familiar with unless you're, really into boxing. But great light heavyweight. Great jab. Underappreciated, except now. Now he's very appreciated by us. Tommy Loughran. Number 3. Well, come on, you're going to be shocked. One of my favorite people, one of my favorite fighters, one of the great heavyweight champs of all time, Larry Holmes. Yeah, he could throw from the hip. He could throw from up top. He could throw it. He threw it out there. He threw it fast. He threw it long. He knew that it was set up the right hand, which he was always looking to set up. He was great. Number 2. Well, when your nickname is the Will of the Wisp, and you are known as one of the greatest boxers of all time, you had 300 or more pro fights, and you actually one time won a fight or won a round without throwing a punch. That means you could navigate. That means you could control range, distance, ring generalship. But it also means that you could have a guy that's worried about your jab. And you're not a big puncher, but you're a great boxer. One of the greatest of all time, Willie Pep, Will of the Wisp. And number 1, well, I think you figured it out already. Probably did. You probably figured it out. My son probably figured it out already. But I'm not gonna make you have to be in suspense any longer. Yeah, the guy that called himself the greatest. Muhammad Ali, speed, power, heavyweight. He had the speed of a lightweight, but he was heavyweight. Man, that jab was fast. It flicked, it shot out, it set everything up. It frustrated you. It didn't only set up your other punches, but it psychologically crushed people. How do I mean that? Physically and psychologically. Physically because you couldn't get away from it, and if you couldn't get away from that, then you're going to get hit with the other punches behind it. Okay, but psychologically, when he hit you with those 2, 3, 4, 5 jabs so fast, psychologically, a lot of guys would say, "Oh my God, it's just too fast. If he's got this kind of speed, how am I going to beat this guy? How am I?" So it discouraged you. It not only physically got to you, but it mentally got to you. Muhammad Ali. Now, I'll throw a couple real quick ones that didn't make but they could have easily made the list. Joe Louis, what a great jab. The Brown Bomber, what a great. Everyone knows he's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I actually got him my number one heavyweight, Muhammad Ali number two, Joe Louis. I also got one of the guys from the 1700s. Okay, but I got to make that guy happy. But this guy's a pioneer. Pioneers have to get appreciated. Gentleman Jim Corbett, he was one of the first guys in the heavyweight when the Marquess of Queensberry rules came around and it changed boxing. They went to gloves and they went to rounds and everything else. More law and order, right? More technique. It wasn't just about strength and power. It was about something that really was foreign to people. A guy who could move, a guy who could use his jab, a guy who could box a little bit. Gentleman Jim Corbett. Harold Johnson, great light heavyweight, great defensive fighter, great lighter. He beat Archie Moore. Anyone who could beat Archie Moore, you must have a great jab. Tommy Hearns, I got to put him out there. The Detroit Hitman. I mean, he was long, he was tall, he had a great jab. And then he used that to set up the devastating right hand. Joe Gans, 1893 to 1909. A lot of people give him credit for inventing the jab. Inventing the jab. Yeah, you're learning something here, guys. The great Joe Gans. One of the greatest lightweights of all time. And then Floyd Mayweather. How am I going to leave my man Floyd out? I can't leave him out. He had a great jab. Yeah, he was a great counterpuncher. He did everything. Great technician. Great winner. A great winner. But he also had a great jab. There it is. I hope you guys like it. What do you think?
I loved it. I always enjoy these lists. I do think it's a great teaching point, like you said. A lot of people might not have known what you just said about the great Joe Gans and being credited with being the man who invented the jab. So, always learning. I am a little surprised. I thought Sonny Liston would be a little bit higher. But you explained that and talked through that. So it was a great list. I think it was also fitting. We just talked about, as you did to open it up, the jab being the setup punch. Well, we just saw two brutal and unbelievable knockouts this past weekend. We just covered on the podcast. Ilia Topuria and Floyd Schofield, both setting it up behind the jab. So I thought the timing was right. If I could, but I'll just throw a couple at you. Some of my favorite fighters, the jabs, watching them growing up as a kid. For me, with the heavyweights, it's got to be Big George Foreman. As you described Sonny Liston's, I kind of envision George Foreman's big, thudding, long jab.
He has to be there. You're right. George Foreman, 100%.
Floyd Mayweather, you just mentioned as honorable mention for sure. Another one for me that I really liked out of the old high guard was Winky Wright. Another long jab from the southpaw position. I thought the Klitschko's, both heavyweights, Vitaly and Vladimir, had some decent jabs and showcased that. But my favorite right now, current fighter, I would say is Bivol, Dmitry Bivol. I love the way he uses his jab and controls distance behind it.
Yeah, I agree. Those are good additions to the list. I agree 100%, especially George Foreman. I mean, all of them. I shouldn't say especially George Foreman, but George Foreman, the thing that people forget is you always take away the picture that gets your attention, right? But the one that has the most color to it, the one that has the most explosion to it, the one that's the most graphic, that's the picture that stays in your mind. And what is that picture? That picture with George from the beginning, probably to the end, was when he hit the scene, when he won his first heavyweight title. It was with the uppercut with the great Joe Frazier, where he lifted him off the floor. He hit him with the right uppercut and literally lifted Frazier off the floor. That's what people think about George. That's it. Power. You brutal power, size, devastation. But they forget that it was the jab that set up that uppercut before the uppercut ever landed, number one. And even after that, the great Joe Frazier, with the heart that he had, he was too small for George. I think the alley fight took a lot out of him. That first alley fight, that took a lot. It took a lot out of both guys, but it took a lot out of Frazier. But George Foreman, when he won that fight against Joe Frazier, he finished it with the uppercut, but he started with the jab. Every time Frazier tried to get himself back into that fight, he kept hitting him with that foam pole jab, where it kept discombobulating Joe. It just never let Joe get himself back together. It never let him clear the cobwebs. I mean, that was like a right hand of other fighters, punch. I mean, that jab performance. It was like some other fighter's right hand. Every time Frazier tried to get himself into a rhythm, bobbing and weaving, boom, that jab would just disorient him again, and then ultimately get hit with the big punches behind it. So yeah. Foreman, I think, is a great inclusion into that list, and everybody you mentioned, all of them, and Beaver right now out there, he's the ultimate boxer, and you can't be the ultimate boxer without a jab.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope all the viewers enjoyed this one. As always, please comment, like, subscribe. Let us know who should be on the list, your best jabs, and we will follow up next week from last week's Best Chin episode. We have a winner that we're going to give out a prize, a Teddy signed boxing glove to. So be on the lookout. Tune in next week. We will announce who the winner is. But as always, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week with more Teddy's historic content.